From deep in an underground bunker in East Tennessee, this is America's premier mortgage field services expert, Paul Williams.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of the Foreclosurepedia podcast. Foreclosurepedia podcast presentation of the Foreclosurepedia radio network is recorded live each weekend. Today we're talking about 24 asset management, HUD's M&M FSM 3.12 program, and a guy which we all call Fast Eddie San Roman, and a HUD procurement officer named Craig Carnes, who has been hearing this exact complaint since at least 2016 that we're going to discuss today. 46 days. That's how long it took a check dated June 12th to actually reach the field service technician who earned it. 46 days between the date printed on the paper and the date it landed in somebody's hand. It's not a mail delay. It's a liquidity problem wearing a stamp. Let's get into it right now. Here's what we know. A field service technician has covered the HUD M&M FSM territory for 24 asset management, going on 2 years now. Right now, that company owes them over $38,000. Break that down with me. $1,827.50 past due more than, and wait for it, 260 days. $8,371.50 past due more than 90 days. $6,474 past due more than 60 days. And $2,677 past due more than 45 days. That's $19,350 sitting past the 45-day payment window alone on a $38,674 total balance. Sit with that $1,827 for a second. Past due more than 260 days. That is not a slow pay cycle. That's an invoice that's been sitting unpaid for the better part of 9 months. Work got done, work was billed, and nobody at 24 Asset Management has cut a check for it since before the year started. They were promised net 45 terms. Actual payment, when it did come in, landed closer to 60 or 70 days. And the field service technician told us they let that slide because in this industry, slow but steady is something, unfortunately, you have to learn to live with. It's how NAMFS members, NAMFS members, built fortunes and then vanished in the night. Ask anyone who worked for A to Z Field Service or National Field Network. Ask anybody who has ever known or heard the name Eric Miller. Eric Miller, the executive director of the NAMFS regime. Yes. But steady broke down. Payments started coming once a month. And only after the field service technician demanded them. Then the aging crossed 90 days. And nearly $1,900 of it has been sitting unpaid for over 260 days straight. Call it what it is. It's a debt this company, 24 Asset Management, Fast Eddie, and his son, Zach San Roman, have decided not to pay. Last week, after another round of getting ignored, the field service technician stopped working. No more routine inspections, no more lawn maintenance orders. 2 hippers, the initial services and winterizations just didn't get done. Think about what that decision actually costs a small business owner. Payroll doesn't stop. Overhead doesn't stop. Fuel doesn't stop. You're covering all of it against a client who won't even tell you when you'll be paid. Field service technician put it in writing and sent it straight to Craig Carnes at HUD in Atlanta. Fast Eddie's response, he said he'd, and I quote here, try to get some money out. Try. Here's the part that should make you angry, very angry. 24 Asset Management already carries a non-pay flag in our firm registry. Missing checks, liens, that's all documented. It's a multi-state history. And let's not forget about Acero, right? Fast Eddie, Lee Mertens. Before 24 Asset Management, he was in charge of Acero Services out of the same Miami address. Acero folded, just closed up shop. Millions of dollars never paid. The same people walked down the hall and kept bidding on federal contracts just like nothing happened. That matters because we're not talking about a company scraping by on a handful of work orders. HUD's FSM 3.12 solicitation handed to Fast Eddie and his son at 24 Asset Management have 6 separate contracts awards across 10 geographic areas. First year value is just over $51 million. Track the life of contract ceilings across all 6, and industry contractors put the total north of $102 million. Not my words. Go pull the contracts, ladies and gentlemen. And in fact, that is your money. You are the taxpayer that is funding Fast Eddie and Zach's new way of life. This is not a cash flow hiccup. This is a business model. This is a NAMPS-oriented business model. Labor is the interest-free line of credit. And it's backed by a 9-figure federal contract that keeps renewing no matter who doesn't get paid. Now let's talk about the man whose desk this landed on. Craig Carnes, HUD's former acting deputy chief procurement officer. He was also the former director of the M&M, the M&M AM and FSM. We've reported on Carnes and HUD procurement failures going all the way back to April of 2016. Contractor forums have flagged him by name since then as the guy insulating HUD's investment in San Roman's contracts while technicians underneath go unpaid. And this is the litany. This is the choir that is always preached and sung by Carnes. There is no doctrine of privity between labor and HUD. But apparently, I guess fraud is okay. Fraud is supported at HUD under Secretary Scott Turner, and screw labor. A decade is long enough to call this a pattern. This month's complaint isn't new information landing on a fresh desk. It's the same complaint that Carnes and HUD have been sitting on and apparently sitting aside since at least 2016. And we're talking about millions of dollars in fraud, including a prior whistleblower complaint that got spiked against Five Brothers and U.S. Bank. This was when HUD stated they had no idea that there were common key codes that unlocked every single door in the United States and its territories. HUD Secretary Scott Turner has spent this year testifying to Congress about his stewardship of taxpayer dollars. Well, I tell you, his stewardship must be just like his NFL career, which was an abysmal failure. About not just throwing money at a problem. He usually aims that line at housing first homelessness policy. It applies just as hard right here. Why does HUD keep throwing and awarding and renewing FSM territory to an operator with a documented multi-state non-payment history and a bankrupt predecessor entity sitting at the same address under the same ownership? And why have HUD's own procurement staff been publicly named for the better part of a decade in connection with protecting that operator? Labor is not asking HUD for a bailout here. Labor's asking to get paid for work HUD already contracted on terms HUD's own awardee already promised in writing. Until Secretary Turner's HUD forces failed M&M FSM awardees to pay what they owe the people actually doing work, every stewardship soundbite out of that office is theater, performed for an audience that isn't the one going unpaid. You know, we're withholding the field service technician's name on this one. Retaliation in this industry isn't hypothetical. Go public on non-payment, and you can watch your territory get reassigned in a week. Go public, and you're never going to be paid. We've seen that time and time again, going all the way back to the double bankruptcy that NAMPS Secretary Heather Berghorst filed, and nobody wanted to say a word. Don't get me started on C's and the rest of the NAMPS members. But here's the editor's note that matters as of publication. We were told that liens are coming. This field service technician has already put HUD on notice in writing that they intend to lien any property tied to the unpaid invoices. And in addition, they're going to reach out to the realtors assigned to those properties and advise the same. We're going to continue keeping track of 24 Asset Management's payment history. We're going to keep tracking whether HUD does anything about it or not. If you have a documented non-payment complaint against 24 Asset Management or anyone else operating under NAMPS members, you know where to find us. Paul Williams, Editor-in-Chief of Foreclosurepedia. This is the Foreclosurepedia Nation. Check out the website, hit me up, and have a great, safe weekend.
Live from deep in an underground bunker in East Tennessee, this is America's premier mortgage field services expert, Paul Williams.